Candida overgrowth. It's a bitch to live with and a bitch to get rid of. Here's the food plan I followed. Here is the food plan that I got from my functional practitioner after I was diagnosed with systemic candida. So it is from the Institute for Functional Medicine. That's where she got her degree. And I would recommend finding your own functional practitioner. It was the best thing I could have done for myself. She saved my life. And I would recommend making sure that the person you get to help you does have a degree from the Institute of Functional Medicine. They are very strict in their standards. As I discussed in one of my earlier videos, the Candida diet is aimed at reducing the overgrowth of Candida, which is a kind of yeast found in the body. The diet involves eliminating foods that promote the overgrowth of Candida, such as sugar, refined carbohydrates, and certain types of fungi. It also places an emphasis on eating foods that support gut health and have antifungal properties. So let's start with proteins. Basically, you can have pretty much any protein. For me, I happen to be allergic to dairy and eggs, so I was not able to have cheese or eggs, but everything else I was able to have. When I started the diet, I did typically stick to things that were easier to digest, like fish, chicken, turkey. Beef and other red meats, they're fine, and they just take a little bit more work for your body to process and get rid of. So I was trying to just keep everything nice and light and easy. Plant protein. Here's where it can get kind of hard. I used to be a vegan, and prior to that, I had been a pescatarian for about 14 years, vegan for maybe 3 years or so. And then all of this stuff started happening to me. And with my candida diagnosis, I couldn't eat any of the foods that I used to eat. So I just had to suck it up and eat meat. I've grown accustomed to it now. It was not easy. It really sucked. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but I chose to more or less be a selfish human being and eat something that's not great for the planet. I do try to make sure I get organic meat and that the animals are free range and are not trapped in a sad cage and fed a bunch of hormones and antibiotics. For plant protein, I didn't do too much of it, mainly because I had higher than average levels of estrogen, and my doctor advised me that it would be better to not have tofu for a period of time, which used to be something I ate on the daily. So I cut that out, and I did add some other things in, like spirulina for protein powder. I added some collagen protein powder in. Pea I used to take, but I did not take on the Candida diet because peas are a bit starchier, and I was trying to go as hardcore as I could to get rid of it as fast as possible. And also, here's a fun one. If you're not familiar with natto, it is basically fermented soybeans covered in baby mucus. Not recommended. Don't try it. And this diet does advise to stop eating processed meats such as lunch meats. I was able to find some prepackaged deli turkey at Costco that didn't have any preservatives in it. That was really nice to have something that was already prepared. So there are certain ones that are acceptable. Just be sure to read all the labels and make sure that it's organic and that there are no nitrates or other preservatives. For dairy and alternatives, like I said earlier, I am allergic to dairy, so I did not eat any of those. I did have almond milk, coconut milk, and macadamia nut milk. My doctor did avoid eating anything fermented for the first few months, so I did not have any yogurt or kefir. I did have those. I, I think it was about 3 months or so into my diet that I started incorporating those. If you are up to that point or not doing as strict a diet as I would recommend reading all the labels for yogurt. A lot of them add sugar in. Typically, they'll say no added sugar, and they do often have starch in them. That was another one that was hard for me to to find any without. So right now, since I'm not on a strict diet, I typically get coconut yogurt, and it does have tapioca starch in it, but it ends up not being too high compared to other things. For fats and oils, I typically cooked most things with avocado oil. It's great for anything high heat. I also use coconut oil for things that were lower heat. And I did sometimes use coconut butter more as like a treat just because it's a little sweeter and you're not allowed to eat anything sweet on this diet. For salads, I typically had flaxseed oil. So I would put that on. And I also used apple cider vinegar. It's a nice, lazy way to not have to make a dressing and just squirt those on. For nuts and seeds, I ate all of these, every single one. It was very hard for me to eliminate cashews. I used to eat those every day, and peanuts were even harder. I am obsessed with peanut butter. I love it. I'll just pound out a jar of peanut butter. It's one of my favorite things. So that was a bummer, but because they're prone to mold, I just had to deal with it. And I did spend copious amounts of money on macadamia nuts, like a lot of money. They're really expensive, but they're really good. For legumes, I chose to not eat any of those while I was on the diet. I was following the stricter protocol, which involved having everything that was in black and not eating anything that was in orange. As you can see here, it says items in orange indicate foods to eliminate when following a more strict version of the anti-candida food plan. I chose to just go hardcore, get it over with. I was tired of not having a brain that functioned and being tired all the time. It was just easier for me to be painful and quick about it. You will see that it says to not consume more than 1 cup of plant proteins per day. And that is really hard if you're on a vegetarian or vegan diet, especially because when you don't eat carbs, you are starving, like fucking ravenous all the time. I ate every 2 to 3 hours. I was always hungry. All right, here we go for vegetables that they consider carbs. This is the carb section. I know your heart just dropped when you saw that. It was labeled this. And you come to find it's only vegetables. Fortunately, there are a lot of vegetables you can eat. They're versatile and you can do weird things with them, like make spaghetti out of zucchini. Again, I did avoid things like starchier vegetables that are here in orange, like beets, carrots, and squash. And you'll see here it says eliminate corn and fermented foods, mushrooms, potatoes, yams, and other root vegetables and starchy vegetables. So I stayed away from anything fermented for, I want to say 6 months or so. Fruit was another one that was really hard for me. I am obsessed with fruit. I eat several types of fruit each day, especially around the start of summer when all those really good sugary fruits are in season, like lychee, mango. Those are my favorites that I would consume lots of in mass quantities. However, there are some fruits that you can eat even on the strict version of this diet. For, I believe, the first month, I didn't have any fruit. That was just a personal preference. And then after that, I started adding things like raspberries, strawberries, and blueberries. I think blackberries a couple times. After a few months, I did start adding green apples in. That was really nice to have. It's an easy snack to have an apple with some nut butter. For herbs and spices, you can have pretty much everything. It's great. Use all of them to season your food. It helps everything to not be boring, and you will get a bunch of added nutrition. Whole grains. As I said, I did the stricter version of this diet, so I did not eat any of this for quite a while. I did eventually add some quinoa in and some oats. And what else have I added in? Bread on occasion. For beverages, I like to start each day with a cup of homemade bone broth. I did have to give up coffee black tea and green tea and switch to herbal tea. Make sure nothing has caffeine in it. It's boring, I know, but whatever. I did sometimes have soda water and put some lemon or lime in it just for something a little bit fancier, if you call that fancy. And in case you were worried that this diet was too strict, don't worry. You can have some filtered fucking water. Like, why did you even put that on there? Fuck you. You're just pointing out how limited this diet is and how awful it is. Condiments do get really limited on this diet since everything or almost everything contains sugar. I did make a lot of things myself. Coconut aminos is a nice one that you can use to add some flavor. It does typically say to add 1 tablespoon or less. If you are not familiar, because I was not and had to look it up, one capital T stands for tablespoon and one lowercase t stands for teaspoon. So coconut aminos are pretty yummy. They're pretty similar to kind of like a cross between soy sauce and teriyaki sauce. And so I would typically put that on some chicken or fish just to give it some flavor. For ketchup, sugar free, you can get both of these things, coconut aminos and ketchup, at any health food store. Lemon and lime juice, yeah, of course, those are nice and easy. Miso I avoided for a little bit because it is technically fermented and I was trying to be extra cautious. I did consume mustard, tamari, which is just gluten free soy sauce, and vinegars like apple cider and white vinegar were the ones that I consumed. I kept finding contradictory information researching online about this, if you had candida, if you could have white vinegar or not. Some articles said yes, some said no. So I checked with my functional practitioner. She actually wasn't sure, and she called up the Institute for Functional Medicine, and they said that distilled white vinegar is fine because it's taken everything out of it. So that was nice because there are certain things like mustard that just have distilled white vinegar in them, and if I wasn't able to consume that, it would just be one less thing that I was able to eat. Another thing they recommend is obviously no sugar, but you're trying to retrain your taste buds so that you're not craving sugar all the time. So they suggest that you don't even have natural artificial sweeteners like stevia. I would say if you are really addicted to sugar and trying to slowly wean yourself off, maybe do tiny amounts and just lessen it lower and lower. But on average, it takes about 14 days for your taste buds to shift. So I avoided all sugar, and eventually I did add in some stevia and some monk fruit and some other things. But for the sake of the diet and really switching my taste buds around, I did just go cold turkey and just fully get rid of any kind of artificial sweetener. It is important to note that the anti-candida food plant is meant to be a short-term intervention and used in conjunction with other therapies like antifungal treatment. So please work with your functional practitioner, your physician, nutritionist, whoever, because each person's diet will be a little bit different depending on their needs and their deficiencies. And as always, please note that I am not a medical doctor, nor do I work in the medical field. This is just my story of how I cured my candida. I promise the diet is not as bad as it looks because you will be feeling so good that it won't matter. Like, it just stops bothering you after a while. You're like, oh yeah, this is hard, but who cares? My brain works. I have energy. I can function and live my life. And that's the thing that's most important. And remember that you won't have to be on it forever. It is short term, but you will, of course, have to make some long term changes because if you go back to exactly how you were eating before, which led to the candida, of course it will happen again. And we really don't want that to happen, especially if you're going through all this hard work to get over your candida. So please comment below and let me know if you have any questions or if you have any recipes you would like to share. That would be lovely. And I will try to start making some videos on recipes shortly. Thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.